Tingles with flyby. Hello, my tinglings. I'm super excited about the video that I have for you today. It's been requested by a lot of you, and I know I've kind of been fobbing people off a bit. And part of that is just because I hadn't really spoken to my son to see if he was okay with me talking about, it's my belly, talking about him and on my channel and that sort of thing. It was really funny. It actually came up because we were talking about because he does streaming on Twitch. I'll talk about that later, but anyway. So he was doing streaming on Twitch and mentioned that I do an ASMR channel, and people were like, oh, give us a link to the channel, let us check it out or whatever. And he was like, oh, well, no, it's a secret, because he wasn't sure if I was okay with, it being shared. And I was like, yeah, free publicity, I'm totally cool with that. But I kind of had been feeling the same way with him, where I was like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, apparently we're both cool with everything, so yeah. Anyway, I also can't believe it's been 10 years. Man, my belly is really just speaking out. So, 10 years ago, let's start from the beginning. I was living in Texas, ever so happily. Though I was the one who spearheaded it, kind of. I was still married to my ex, and his mom had suggested that we should move to Texas. And I was like, hell no, was my kind of initial response. But my little Mormon brain worked well for me and was like, oh, it was like I was nervous about doing it, and I didn't feel like I didn't want to do it, so then it became the thing that I had to do to be a good person. Kind of the tangle that my brain worked myself into. So then I was like, okay, we're moving to Texas for 6 months. It was always going to be 6 months. So we moved there. We moved to Texas. And so I graduated in December, and then we moved there in March. So it was right after I graduated. And I was only going to be there 6 months, so I was like, I don't really know if there's much point in me getting a job while I'm there. Probably in hindsight would have been a good idea for me to get a job while I was there, but I didn't get a job while I was there. But I kind of had it lined up. I think that I was going to go back to Vision when I came back, which I did end up doing. But anyway. So, in Texas, his parents are vegetarian as well. And so, no eating of meat in the house. Which I didn't want to out of, respect for them. But I used to go out to get meat. And when I took a trip in June, my dad took me to one of those Argentinian grills where they just walk around with the meat. I started this blog that I called Confessions of a Carnivore. And it was a private blog, just talking about what it was like living in Texas and all that. Fun times. Anyway, so I had a lot of time to myself. That's actually when I sewed my... That's when I finished. That's when I made... Yeah, I think that's when I sewed my rainbow quilt. Finished it off. But I remember finishing off. I think I finished it off before. Yeah, I must have, because I remember remember being in that house. Anyway, but I was making I was like, oh, I had so much fun with that rainbow quilt, so I started working on a little mini rainbow quilt, which we may get to or may not. I don't even know how long I've been talking already, and I've barely even started, so we'll see what we get to. So living in Texas, it was a horrendous time. I thought his parents were, I thought his mom was very overbearing, his dad was kind of not present, and then his sister, who had moved away, ended up moving back while we were there as well. So the one big happy family wasn't very fun. So I spent a lot of time in my room. Oh, his mom is also a big micromanager, so normally I would like to, help with the dishes or do some cooking. Basically all of my good intentions got snuffed out by the micromanaging, and I didn't feel very much freedom to be myself at all, which, me probably did not jive with me for being me. So I spent a lot of time in my room, our room. It's funny, we actually had separate bedrooms before that, and then we were sharing a bedroom there, we were sharing a bed again. But anyway, so I spent a lot of time at TSC, which is a online speedrunning community, which is where I met my love. And so I just used to hang out in there a lot, just talk to people, and that was kind of my saving grace through there, was just, going and being in this online community. And in September, I think it was in September-ish, we discovered, so we kind of played different games in the community, so like different people would play just like board games online, and we'd play them together. iSketch was a big one, playing like Pictionary and that sort of thing. But then we found Mafia, which was really great because it's good for a lot more people. And so we would try and get lots of TSC people together to go and play Mafia. And so I was obsessed with Mafia for a while, just playing so much Mafia. And there ended up being a particular person who wasn't in TSC that I knew of, who was in a lot of these games. And he went by the name Worcester, and he had a big frowny face with a little tear. That was his avatar. And he used the frowny emoticon more than anybody I had seen. It seemed like a very, very sad person. I was 22 at the time, and I just kind of hit it off with him, with Worcester. Just kind of, we were kind of pals, I guess, is how we started off. Just, kind of pals. And I was like, oh yeah, Worcester's cool, because we ended up in a lot of Mafia games together. And I could see he was very sad, and I thought, oh, he could use some community. And so I was like, oh, you should come to TSC, come to TSC. And so I invited him in and got him to come into TSC. And that was all good. And then he started speedrunning, which is what TSC is about. Well, anyway, I'll get into that bit later. But so we were cool, and we started talking a lot just about whatever, and I was just like, okay, this is cool. And certain things started to concern me. One was, Orster started speedrunning, and he said it was his first time speedrunning, but he was getting good times. Like, good times, not great times, but he said they were really bad, but they were good for somebody who had never speedrun before. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. Anyway, end of October, beginning of November, me and my ex were moving back from Texas to Utah. And in that time, we took a little bit of a longer way around. We met somebody from TSC actually while we were there. Stopped and celebrated my niece's pie birthday, so when she turned 3.14. That should be December. Maybe that was another time. Maybe we drove to Texas. Because that should be after November. Anyway, we were coming back. That might not have been that time. But anyway, because we came back through North Dakota. That's what happened. We went to North Dakota. And no, we were gonna go. Anyway, I don't know. When I came back to Utah, kind of all hell had broken loose in the TSC community, because it turned out that Worcester was, what was his previous name? Smizla, who I'd never heard of before, but apparently he was Mike 89's younger brother, and he had been banned for cheating when he was like 10, something like 10 or 11, so very young, and he was now 14. And I was very upset. He was my pal, and I was like, why are you lying? Like, why wouldn't you tell me the truth about who you are? That sort of thing. And I was like, if we're gonna still be friends, you can't lie to me. Like, you just can't lie to me. Like, that's not okay. I love to say it's the last time he's ever lied to me, but definitely was a big change from there. As far as that, I think I was the first person who ever really said that to him, because it made a huge difference to him. I think it still makes a huge difference to him to this day. Not to say that, he never lies about anything, but his mom was a very compulsive, well, I guess she's still alive, but anyway. But it also opened up a more honest dialogue between us, and we became closer. But while all this was going on, I also started to feel very, very strongly for him, and I was trying to figure out what his feelings were, because I just couldn't quite place them. But the best analogy that I could think of was a mother hen defending her chicks. I was just like, I feel like a mother hen. Like, that's kind of like the feeling that it was eliciting in me. And so gradually I began to kind of take that to its logical conclusion, was that I felt motherly towards him, and that I just felt very protective of him, and very wanting to take care of him, nurturing, and all of that. And I began to feel very strongly, and I knew I loved him. I just knew I loved him. But I wasn't sure how to broach. He was old enough at 14 for me to think, well, if I just tell him I love him, I'm not sure he's going to take this the right way. So, kind of debating in my head how to go about this, that sort of thing, or whether I should do anything. And then my hand kind of got forced, because he said in a Mafia game in the graveyard, so only people in the graveyard can see it until the end of the game. But anyway, he said, I love fly. So, tingles with flyby. In TSE, I'm flyby. I really love the name Flyby. To me, that's why I've called myself Flyby on the channel, is because I really identify with the name Flyby, because just a lot of important things happened to me while I was while I was in that space, and so that's why I really like the name Flyby. So I know lots of you call me Jenny, but you can call me Flyby and I'll be even happier, but you can call me Jenny too, since that's my name, but that's why I call myself Flyby. Anyway, so he said I love fly while he's in there, but it was kind of that, it's throwaway, but I wanted to address it because I had that going on in my head, and I didn't want him, one, to get the wrong idea, but I, number two, didn't want him to think that I didn't care about him either. And my internet went out, so that was really annoying, and so I was like driving around Provo in the middle of the night trying to write him an email to tell him, basically in detail, that I loved him, kind of like like I had motherly love for him, sort of thing. And this is probably one of the most, like, I'm not religious, but it's still, like, to me, there is nothing more sacred than just those feelings in someone else. And so, like, the response that I got to that is one of the most sacred things that there is to me. Because he didn't really know how to take it at first. Nobody had ever told him before that they loved him. And that was heartbreaking to me, as somebody who loved him, as a mother loves someone, to think that at 14 years old he had never heard those words before. And he just began to flourish. Like I told you, he had, like, he used to have walls and walls and walls of frowny faces, just a frowny face emoticon. And it was his way of expressing the pain inside, the sadness inside. But I saw in him, and I still see in him, something very special, and something amazing. And for him to see himself the way I saw him just a little bit made such a huge difference to him. And it was within a week or so that he said, "I love you" back. That's not what I was in it for. I wasn't really in it for that, but it was more so I was happy for him that he had somebody he could say that to. And that's the thing. Anyway, we were talking about this the other day, and we're like, oh, it's going to be, like 10 years ago. And so, and we watched Seinfeld together, so we were watching the same episodes, and we timed it so that we would be watching them at the same time, but then we were just, like, chatting back and forth, like text chatting. Anyway, so our plan is in October, we're going to watch Seinfeld again. Anyway, so that's how it happened. That's how and then he kind of embraced me as his mom. So specifically not his mom, because he's like, oh, I think of mom as a bad thing. But because I'm American and I say mom, then he was like could think of a mom as a good thing. And so I became his mom, and he's my son. There's a lot that's happened since then. I had a really hard time with the experience, I was still married to my ex at the time, and he was not understanding at all. And, well, I don't think he liked that I wasn't his little slave girl anymore, basically, that I was actually caring for something else besides him, when he was never caring at all for me. And my sister had resentment for me because she had a baby, my nephew, Zephyr, shortly after, and I was very consumed because I told you, very sad. That doesn't go away overnight. He was very suicidal, sometimes wanting to kill his parents, different times. And so I was very involved in nurturing him through that time. It was very, very stressful for me. And I didn't have any support, really, because the two people who were closest to me at that time was my ex and my sister. And both of them just thought I was weird and, treating me like it was the strangest thing ever. And just kind of shunned me, because my sister still wanted to be around me, but she was like, I don't want to hear anything about Mark. That's his real name, is Mark. And, well, Mama Bear wasn't too happy about that. There's still issues in my relationship with my sister because of that. And also her betraying me by inviting my ex over for Christmas. But anyway, we'll not go into that right now. But anyway, so it was a very isolating time for me because all of the support that I had was online from other people in the community who knew me. So, Aruki, who works on Hat in Time, he does web dev, does programming and that sort of thing. He was one of my big supports. There's also part of the reason that there's drama with that is to do with my ex as well, and him not wanting me to be close to my sister. So I don't lay blame completely on my sister for that situation. A lot of it's, anyway, it is what it is. Certain things I do, certain things I don't. Not about my sister though. Let's talk about my baby. So, obviously, one of the most terrifying things in the world is thinking that your child is suicidal and they are over in Australia and you can't be near them. And so the only thing I had was these little fingers to type away and try and heal and love this precious, precious boy. And he's still alive, so I guess I did okay. I did some things I regret, but I won't go into that right now. Or maybe I will. It's my Mormonism as well. My ex suggested that I go and speak to the bishop about our relationship. So I went and spoke to the bishop, and the bishop kind of was like, oh, blah, 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 like it's good, but or like it's okay, but then also like you should end this relationship. And so I walked out of the office, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But then a little while later, it was kind of, this was a couple years later, it hit the point where he was okay enough on his own. I don't think I could have ever done it when I thought he was in a very, very vulnerable position, but I kind of thought he was at a point where he was okay, and I also told him, you can message me anytime if it's ever, like that situation type thing. And then I didn't talk to him for a month. And that's the biggest regret of my life, hands down. That is the biggest regret of my life. I betrayed myself. I betrayed my son by doing that. And I just want to be really upfront and honest about that. And that is part of the reason I do hold, that's part of Mormonism, was getting me into that position to not just back myself in to be exactly who I want to be. And I did something that I really regret. Fortunately, we kind of mended fences, but taken a long time, and I mean, honestly, I'd be surprised if to this day it doesn't still have an impact on him, how he is. And I regret that, and that's my fault. I really let him down there. Anyway, so he ended up moving out when he was 16. Got emancipated and was living with his girlfriend, who I really didn't like, and was trying to break them up all the time. Nothing controlling or manipulative, very straightforward, and hey, I don't think you guys should be together, to both of them. And trying to just point out the reasons that it wasn't a good idea to be together. Anyway, they stayed together for a while and then they broke up. And then she got him arrested. So that was good. So he was on he was on house arrest when I came down. And it actually sounds like quite a story now. But at the time, I was a bit more naive. I was like, oh, okay, if that's what they're saying, whatever. But he was allowed to be out during the day, but then just had to sleep every night at the house. Because the whole idea was I was going to come down, and I got a place to stay, and he was going to come and stay with me while I was there for a month. But anyway, so I remember the day that I flew into Australia was the 15th of December, 2010. That's the day I met my son in person, and it was so good. And it was so funny because it was the first time that, like, obviously I had felt very protective of him, but his dad actually drove us. His dad's actually okay guy. His mom, not at all. But anyway, his dad is okay, but a bit naive, misguided, and interesting. Anyway, so his dad drove us to the little place that I had, and that I got on Airbnb. And then the lady was meeting me there, and she was like walking us around the neighborhood. And one of the strongest experiences for me was just we were crossing the street, and I was just like, I could feel that in person, like what it actually means to have that protective instinct in person. I was just like, I will jump in front of anything to protect this boy. I'm like, he is, and it's a similar thing. I feel a similar thing to my nieces and nephew, but it's just not quite as just like front of mind, I guess. I've run out into the street after, them when they were little kids tons of times, but not somebody so old, I guess. So, because he was 16 years old at that point. But I was just like, And it was actually a bit of a turbulent time, but I'm not going to go through every kind of up and down in this. This is more about just letting you know about him. Anyway, so it was a bit of up and down time, but that's where I really got into cricket. I watched 3 test matches while I was here, because he played cricket growing up, and so I really wanted to know about cricket and, show an interest and be involved and know what's going on. So I was watching cricket so that I would have a good idea, because I'd tried watching it before, I had no clue, but was a lot easier there. First of all, because it had Shane Warne commentary. It's actually really good for if you don't know anything, for learning. And also having it high enough resolution that you can actually see the ball. Very helpful. So, anyway, watched a lot of cricket, and yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time, and I absolutely bawled my eyes out when I had to go back to the airplane to leave him. I was like, I don't want to leave him. I don't ever want to leave him. And so my plans straight away were, I'm coming back to Australia. I was looking at becoming a nurse so that I could come over on a skilled migrant visa. So that was my plan. I was going to become a nurse midwife and come over as soon as I could. And then shortly, within a couple of weeks, me and my love were together because we started talking while I was in Australia, and well, that's another video that I've already done. It's about how me and my love got together. So when me and my love got together, obviously he wasn't quite aware of the mental illness that he had and the impacts of that, because our plan from the beginning was always that Mark was going to come over and live with us. Just like once we settled down and found a place. But kind of, my love had a big breakdown, and it was just kind of too much for him to handle taking that on as well. And so it just like didn't work out then. But finally, he still came down to visit a couple times. So anyway, after he graduated, when I was at the airport and I came down to live here, I was stopped in Sydney. I had a 4-hour layover there, so we were like walking around together, and he was still in my quilt and throwing in boxes. Anyway, he's a funny kid. I was like, oh, so what do you want to do after you graduate? And he's like, oh, I want to be a Pokemon master. I was like, okay, cool, sounds good. I didn't really know what he meant by that. I have a lot better idea now. So he is a speedrunner and plays on Twitch. He has a YouTube channel as well, which will be in the description box as long as I don't get lazy on my description boxes, which I often do. But if you look up Worster, it's Werster on Twitch or YouTube, you'll find him. He has world records in Pokemon and Sonic and I'm sure other things, but he mainly plays lots of things actually, probably, but he really loves Pokemon, so that's how he's a Pokemon master. Anyway, and he's a big shut-in. I'm a big introvert. He's an even bigger one, and he just loves living in his room. He is not with his fiancée anymore, thank the Lord. She, well, yeah. Not a fan of her. I never met her, but I gave her a good chance. A good long chance. Once, anyway, I won't go into that detail, but I'm glad when that was over. So now, he's just living with, because he moved in with us about 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago. And his friend, Nayana, moved in with us as well, because she was in a really tough time, getting away from her parents and all this stuff. And I'm really grateful for her, because she kind of gave the catalyst for him to actually move in. But it didn't really work out with her, so she moved out after like 6 months, and it's just been the 3 of us since then. And it's been good. So that's pretty much it. Let me know. I'm sure you guys have questions. Put them in the comments. If there are enough questions, I might make another video just answering your questions. Otherwise, go check Worster out. He's my son. You can tell him his mom sent you. And, yeah. If you know anybody in a similar situation, I know one lady who, we called ourselves internet moms because that was how we did things. Anyway, she was like she was a big help to me. I found her a little bit later on, but she was a really big help to me in feeling validated about that relationship that I had and those feelings and everything like that. And obviously now we live together and love all around. And anybody who disagrees, doesn't matter. Anyway, so that's my son. So if you hear me talk about my son and wonder how I have a 23-year-old son when I'm only 31, that's how. I was really hoping he was going to make me a grandma, though. But he doesn't want to have kids, so when he was going to marry this other girl, then I was going to do that, and then I was going to be the nana, but not now. But I'm happy about this now, because not a good situation. Anyway, I'm rambling on. But that's what I normally do, isn't it? So, thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing my story about my son. And spread the love. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye, my tinglings. Thanks for watching.